expected to hit the Keys in South Florida early Sunday morning. Now, as we've said this morning, there are millions of people who have been ordered to evacuate. Almost 5.6 million, could be the largest mass evacuation in U.S. history. And already more than 7,000 people have seen power outages in South Florida. That number down from 10,000. Officials say that outages could last several days, several weeks in some areas. So take that into consideration. If you're staying in these evacuation areas, you may be without power for weeks. Another element we need to consider here, the blood supply. There will unfortunately be injuries. People rush to hospitals once first responders can get to them. The supplier for the Southeast is called One Blood. Its officials are urging people to donate. They urged before the storm because right now their donation centers, understandably, are closed. Joining me now, One Blood's Vice President of Marketing Communications, Susan Forbes. Susan, good to see you. We saw each other last in Orlando after that terrible shooting at the Pulse nightclub. And what you told me then was the importance of having a ready blood supply before an emergency. First, talk to me about if the centers across Florida, the 200 hospitals that are serviced, have what they need at the start.
I can assure you that our hospital partners have the necessary blood on hand. And you're right, it's the need for a ready blood supply in advance of the storm, in advance of any type of tragedy. The blood has to be there. So the blood center has been very, very busy at One Blood behind the scenes, really for the past week, preparing for this storm. As soon as we had an inkling of an idea that this could be headed our way, the preparations begin. So donors had to come in before the storm. We have to get the blood to the hospitals and actually get extra blood to them so that they have it on hand to ride out the storm, because we're not able to deliver blood to them when the hurricane is hitting.
So let me ask you this, as people are sent to hospitals, and the unfortunate reality is that there will be people because of the storm who are rushed in and will need transfusions. How will One Blood be able to get the blood to them in the storm, or is that something that has not yet been determined if their reserves right now aren't enough?
Well, like I said, we made sure that our hospital partners have the necessary blood on hand. We have been shipping blood and delivering blood to them in the past several days so that they have extra on hand, more than they normally would have to ride out the weekend. So we feel very confident that they have what they need on hand. And then as soon as the storm starts to lift in certain areas and it's safe for us to able to go back out, we will begin to deliver additional supplies to them as they need it. So, but this really, shows the importance of a ready blood supply in advance of a storm. It's important to have a ready blood supply every day of the year, but it's heightened when you see a Category 5 headed towards your state. So this is why we encourage donations beforehand so that we have what's needed for these hospitals in advance, and it's in their hospitals right now.
All right, Susan Forbes with One Blood. The folks over there, you guys do an amazing job. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, and I'll check in after the storm passes. Again, thanks so much. Now, in about an hour, more shelters were open in Fort Myers. We're talking West Coast now, Florida, for those who are seeking to escape the hurricane's path, as we've seen that general kind of gradual shift of the center of this cone moving to the west. And it's less of a cone now as it gets so close to Florida. Some of the people who live there in Fort Myers slept in the streets overnight, hoping to guarantee a spot. Cars parked outside of these shelters. CNN's Drew Griffin is in Fort Myers. Drew, good morning to you. What are you seeing, and how many people are we talking about waiting to get into these shelters?
Well, I don't have an exact number, Victor, but many of the shelters filled up quickly, both here in Lee County, Fort Myers, where I'm standing right now, and down in Naples, Collier County, when that shift to the west took place. For a long time, the folks here on the west side thought this was going to be more of a Miami event, maybe going up the East Coast. But when Irma made that jog, or was potentially going to make that jog towards the west, it got real serious. The counties distributed their level A mandatory evacuation. Those evacuations are all based on potential storm surge. So you had all the barrier islands, Marco Island, Pine Island, Sanibel, Captiva, all of those under mandatory evacuation. Parts of cities like Cape Coral across the Calahoosahatchee River, where I'm standing right now under mandatory evacuation. And for wind, all the mobile home parks advised to evacuate. So the shelters filled up quickly. They're adding more shelters today. As you said, some are opening up within the hour. 3 more will open at 10 a.m. today. So continually, we see people taking the threat seriously, evacuating. I don't see any signs of panic. There's a lot of preparation going on, and it looks like everybody who wants shelter will be able to get into a shelter, even though they may have to wait in line this morning. Victor.
All right, Drew Griffin for us there in Fort Myers. Drew, thank you so much. The wind is picking up here again. And again, Hurricane Irma is going to be here landfall when that eye is over land here. Expected to hit the Keys very early Sunday, but you're going to see these gusts of stronger winds as we get closer to that hour. Our special live coverage of Hurricane Irma continues. Stay with us.